There was a time when appearing in Playboy didn't end a Hollywood career. It launched one. From the 1960s through the 1990s, Playboy magazine was more than just provocative photography. It was a cultural moment, a spotlight, a statement. And for many actresses, whether rising stars or household names, posing for the magazine wasn't scandalous. It was strategic. These weren't anonymous models. These were women you'd seen on movie posters, on red carpets, and in primetime television. Some posed at the height of their fame, others did it to break free from typecasting, and a few simply took control of their own image on their own terms. In an era before Instagram and celebrity brands, Playboy was one of the only places where actresses could show the world who they really were: flawed, fearless, and unapologetically bold. Today, we're taking a look back at the most iconic, unexpected, and unforgettable moments when vintage Hollywood met the pages of Playboy. Some shocked the world. Others changed it. Before the fame, before the diamonds, before she became a legend, Marilyn Monroe was the first. In December 1953, Hugh Hefner released the inaugural issue of Playboy magazine. On the cover, a smiling, glamorous blonde in a black dress. Inside, a now iconic photo of Marilyn, nude, stretched across a red velvet background. It wasn't a new photo shoot. The image had been taken years earlier for a calendar. Marilyn had already signed away the rights, but it didn't matter. That issue sold out almost instantly, and overnight, Playboy was born on the back of Hollywood's most fragile star. What's remarkable is that Marilyn didn't run from it. She embraced it. When asked about the photo, she didn't dodge the question. She simply said, "It's no big deal. I needed the money." That honesty, combined with her vulnerability, only made her more powerful. Marilyn didn't just appear in Playboy, she legitimized it. And in doing so, she became the original blueprint for the modern celebrity. Unfiltered, desired, and always in control, even when it didn't look that way. In the early 1980s, Bo Derek wasn't just famous, she was a phenomenon. After her breakout role in 10, 1979, where she famously ran along the beach in cornrows and a nude swimsuit, Bo became the definition of beauty for an entire generation. Her image was everywhere, on posters, calendars, and yes, the cover of Playboy. But here's what made it different. Bo Derek didn't need the magazine. The magazine needed her. She graced the cover multiple times during the 80s, often in photos taken by her husband, director John Derek. The images weren't just sensual. They were artistic, controlled, and deeply personal. Bo wasn't being posed. She was presenting herself, on her own terms. Unlike many covers of the time, Bo's photos had a certain calm confidence. There was no attempt to shock, no desperate performance, just a woman at the peak of her fame, perfectly aware of her power and unafraid to use it. Bo Derek didn't chase attention, she embodied it. In the late 1970s, Farrah Fawcett wasn't just a television star. She was a national obsession. With her role in Charlie's Angels and that iconic red swimsuit poster, she became the face of American glamour. But for years, Farrah carefully curated her image. Sexy, but wholesome. Confident, but never overtly provocative. So when she finally appeared in Playboy in 1995 at the age of 48, it was more than just a photo shoot. It was a statement. The issue shattered sales records. And the photos? Bold, artistic, and surprisingly raw. Shot by famed photographer Greg Gorman, they leaned into shadows and emotion, focusing less on exposure and more on presence. Farrah wasn't trying to be the girl next door anymore. She was showing the woman she'd become, stronger, freer, and fully in control of her narrative. Critics called it a comeback. Fans called it iconic. Farrah didn't pose to revive her career. She posed to reclaim it. And in doing so, she redefined what beauty could look like, not just for Playboy, but for an entire generation. Before Basic Instinct made her an overnight icon, Sharon Stone was a working actress waiting for the right moment. That moment came in 1990 when she appeared in Playboy, not as a last resort, but as a calculated move. The photos were bold, deliberate, and striking. She wasn't just posing, she was announcing herself. This wasn't about innocence or allure, it was about power. Confidence. Intentional sexuality. Just 2 years later, Basic Instinct would explode into theaters and Sharon would become the most talked about woman in Hollywood. But it was her Playboy shoot that came first, positioning her not as an emerging starlet, but as a woman ready to break the rules, rewrite the script, and leave everyone else to catch up. What made Sharon's shoot stand out wasn't just how she looked, it was how she stared back at the camera. Unapologetic, focused, in charge. She didn't use Playboy for attention, she used it as leverage, and it worked. By the mid-1990s, Drew Barrymore had fully embraced her place in pop culture, not as a polished starlet, but as a fearless, unpredictable force who lived loudly and on her own terms. She was showing up on red carpets barefoot, dyeing her hair on a whim, starring in edgy indie films, and becoming a fixture of the decade's more rebellious spirit. She wasn't playing by the rules of America's sweetheart. She was something far more interesting. Authentically chaotic, confidently cool, and completely unfiltered. So when she posed for Playboy in 1995, it didn't feel forced or scandalous. It felt natural, like another page in the scrapbook of a decade defined by breaking norms. The shoot itself captured exactly that energy. Bright, cheeky, full of personality. It wasn't trying to be provocative. It was fun, defiant, and completely in line with the way Drew carried herself in public. A little glam, a little punk, and totally free. She didn't need Playboy to prove anything. She used it to punctuate what everyone already knew. Drew Barrymore wasn't playing a role. She was the role. In a decade obsessed with individuality, she stood out by being more herself than anyone else. No one appeared on the cover of Playboy more times than Pamela Anderson. And that wasn't an accident. It was a strategy. Her first appearance came in 1989 after a cameraman at a football game broadcast her face on the Jumbotron, and the world couldn't look away. Playboy called immediately. From there, Pamela's rise was meteoric. Over the next decade, she would appear on the cover a record 14 times, becoming the defining face of the magazine in the 90s. But what set her apart wasn't just her look, it was her brand awareness. Pamela knew exactly what she represented. The ultimate blonde bombshell, exaggerated and unapologetic, built for fantasy but grounded in self-promotion. She used the Playboy platform, not just for fame, but to launch her career in television, Baywatch, movies, and eventually as a pop culture icon. Pamela didn't need Playboy, but she understood how to own it. For many, she wasn't just a model. She was the 90s. Before 9.5 weeks turned her into a global symbol of sensuality, Kim Basinger had already laid the groundwork, quietly but deliberately. In the early 1980s, right as her acting career was gaining momentum, Kim posed for Playboy. The photos weren't about shock or reinvention, they were cinematic, soft, almost restrained. And yet they hinted at something powerful just beneath the surface. That tension between innocence and danger would become her signature. The Playboy shoot didn't define her. It predicted her. Years later, when she starred alongside Mickey Rourke in 9.5 weeks, the world finally saw what the photos had already suggested. A woman who could carry desire on her own terms. Not loud, not forced, just present, and completely in control. Kim Basinger's Playboy moment wasn't a turning point, it was a preview. And for those who were paying attention, it said everything. When Ursula Andress walked out of the ocean in Dr. No, 1962, wearing that white bikini and carrying a diving knife, a cinematic archetype was born. She wasn't just the first Bond girl, she was the Bond girl. And for millions, that image never faded. But what many forget is that nearly a decade later, she posed for Playboy, at a time when few major actresses dared to do so. The photos, published in 1965, were bold but tasteful. They didn't try to reinvent her. They simply captured what the world already saw. A woman who owned the screen with her presence alone. There was no need for performance. Ursula Andress didn't flirt with the camera, she commanded it. Her appearance in Playboy didn't spark scandal. It confirmed her status. Ursula wasn't chasing relevance. She already was the fantasy. In a time when glamour was tightly controlled by studios, Ursula's decision to pose felt fearless. It wasn't about rebellion. It was about freedom. In the world of cult cinema, few names carried the same mix of danger and allure as Sybil Danning. Throughout the 1980s, she became a fixture in action films, sci-fi thrillers, and low-budget epics. always playing women who were fierce, commanding, and impossible to look away from. She wasn't the damsel. She was the one holding the weapon and the spotlight. So when she appeared in Playboy, it wasn't a surprise. It was a declaration. Her photos captured what her fans already knew. Sybil wasn't just another pretty face in Hollywood. She was a force. Her image combined fantasy with strength, and her physicality had nothing passive about it. She wasn't posing to be admired. She was staring back, fully aware of her power. Unlike many actresses who used Playboy to soften their image, Sybil leaned into her legend, bold, unapologetic, and larger than life. She didn't need the spotlight. She brought it with her.